You know, the man of tomorrow stands alone, baby, but he ain't the only one because Jeff Bezos is standing alone. Well, okay. Maybe I'm not standing alone. Maybe Jeff Bezos isn't really standing alone, but holy shit. Have we got one hell of a lead story to get into? All right, look, I don't like Sovryn Tech being some kind of like tabloid junkie, podcast, okay? And 9 times out of 10, 9.999999 times out of 10, I would never talk about this sort of stuff. In fact, I can only think of once in Sovryn Tech's history. Okay, no, actually, I can think of twice. One time there was this guy, okay, I'm not going to mention his name, who is really hot and bothered. He just loves contracts, and he really thinks, if you break a contract, I can shoot you. That's what this guy thinks, right? And then what does he do? He goes and starts stooping and getting a relationship with a married woman, who signed a contract that, that she wouldn't engage in infidelity or anything like that. I guess he didn't care about contracts then. I can't imagine who the hell I'm talking about as far as that goes, though. Now, and look, hey, well, as you're going to find out, I don't give a rat's shit about contracts, okay? I mean, that's a long-known thing about me. I could go on and on about that, contracts being effectively tyranny, but that's besides the point. Now, the other time that I've talked about this sort of thing was with, was it Andy Rubin? Who was like stooping, I don't know, Sergey Brin's wife or something. There's some kind of bullshit that went on there. And then Andy Rubin runs off to China, effectively. But we only talked about that because it gave analysis into the shakeup that was happening with the management at Google. But bottom line, I don't normally talk about this sort of thing unless I consider it, interesting or I guess relevant. In this case, it's a little more interesting. But what are we talking about? Well, as we found out on January 9th, 2019, on Twitter of all things, Jeff Bezos, yes, the CEO of Amazon, not any other Jeff Bezos, Jeff Bezos is getting divorced from his wife, Mackenzie. Yes, the richest man in the world is, he might not be the richest man in the world by a long shot anymore, because I think, what did they say? He was worth some odd 144 billion, something like that. I think, the richest man in the world, it kind of goes up and down by the day. It's usually him or it's Bill Gates or it's somebody in Saudi Arabia, whatever, and so because he and his wife, Mackenzie, they are citizens of the state of Washington. In the state of Washington, and because they signed no prenup, the state of Washington basically says that she can automatically get half of whatever he has. And so, they're going to order a very large knife off of Amazon, cut the house directly in half because, Amazon has everything. So I'm sure they have a knife that could cut a house in half. I'm not sure if they're going to cut the children. Oh, no, sorry, that's terrible. But anyway, bottom line, Mackenzie is going to be worth $67 billion, but then so is Bezos. So he's a far cry now from being the richest man alive. That said, that might be the one thing that a lot of people are really concentrating on, that Mackenzie is now going to, he's going to lose half of his, fortune or something like that. I mean, folks, after 100 million, do you really keep counting? After that point, does it really matter? Honestly, because, all right, so the tabloids are going nuts with this. I want to talk about the other, and there's a point to all this. Don't worry. I'm not just gossiping here. Okay. In fact, quite the opposite. But all the tech press is going nuts with this. It's not just the tabloids that are going nuts with it. The tech press is all over it and everything. And they're concentrating on one or two things. Like I said, one of them is that, he's going to be out $67 billion. And it's just hilarious that they even bother to talk about that. Like that matters. I mean, if you got 1 billion, what can't you do? Seriously. What can't you do? And especially when you own a fucking space company, what can't you do? So I don't think that even matters. The other part that people are concentrating on, and where things get a little more interesting for me, is not just that they're getting divorced, but it appears that Bezos, for at least a few months now, has actually been courting / dating / well, judging by some of the sex, some of the sexy text messages that have gone out, stooping another woman named Lauren Sanchez. In fact, she's not just another woman. She, at the time, apparently, and, this is all hearsay and whatever else, but she at the time was married to a guy named Patrick Whitesell, I think, or Whitesell. Some guy, Hollywood, whatever. And even though now they're saying, well, they've actually been separated since the fall, Lauren Sanchez and this Patrick guy, they've been separated since the fall. But it would appear that if the sexy text messages and so on that have been going around in some of the pictures and some other things, that, well, Bezos and Miss Sanchez have been doing, well, should she be Mrs. Whitesell? Well, who knows these days, but then that kind of gets to my point that I want to get to. But that Lauren and Bezos, have been doing things well before there was any kind of separation. Did it cause the separation? Maybe. I mean, in a very conventional sense, what is Patrick supposed to do, right? Is he supposed to say, gee, Lauren, I'm a better guy than him? Yeah, right. Okay. What, you're going to say you have more money than him? And as far as, like body-wise, I mean, we've been talking about it for a couple of years now. Like, what's Bezos been doing? The guy's been jacked as shit. I mean, he looks like the Terminator walking around. He's got the arms, he's got the whole thing. And it's just so funny because, I mean, now that kind of makes sense, right? It's like, oh, he started getting, because this Lauren Sanchez, I mean, she's, somewhat of an older woman. I think she's like 49 or something like that, maybe 50. But, she has, in conventional terms, and I'm not saying that this necessarily matters to me, but, just saying, like, in conventional terms, I mean, she looks like a model. In fact, she's done effectively modeling, amongst other things. She's been, actually, she can do quite a bit. She's apparently, she has her own filming company, but it's an aerial filming company. She can fly. She's licensed to fly helicopters, airplanes. I mean, she can do all kinds of crazy shit. She's been in Fight Club, like she's been in movies. She was an anchor woman. She hosted a dancing television show of some kind. I mean, this is a gal that's, she's living it up. She's done her shit. And appears to live, a very adventurous lifestyle, which, hey, bravo. So maybe Bezos felt like, oh, shit, I got to be able to keep up with this woman. and so he starts working out and he starts, looking jacked as shit. I mean, and hey, okay, to say nothing of the fact that, all right, hold on. So all of these that's such a weird word, but sexy text messages, all of these, as well as apparently some dick pics, were collected by the National Enquirer. Okay. Last time I checked, the National Enquirer was just a step above Weekly World News and was really a joke, like that they would literally Photoshop things and that of course, quote unquote, real magazines and news outlets do that too, upon request of the celebrity that they happen to be filming, it seems, or getting pictures of or whatever. But, how much does anybody trust the National Enquirer? Like, I didn't know that had at some point become a serious news organization. And maybe it hasn't because, Business Insider, not that they're that serious, but just about everybody is reporting on the text messages that supposedly the National Enquirer got. The National Enquirer also got pictures of them from months ago where they're holding hands, apparently. And again, there's claims of a dick pic, and supposedly Jeff Bezos is pretty big, which, what's Patrick going to say to that? I don't know. And in some of these, these sexy text messages, apparently Bezos said to Lauren Sanchez, I'd love to just tuck you in tonight, but then in the morning, I don't want to be so gentle. Ooh, man, I know I got goosebumps, and I know my nipples are hard right now. Oh, Jeff Bezos, talk to me that way. Now, I know you're like, Stallion, why are you talking about this? Okay, all right, let's get to the meat of this. So first off, I was stunned. Now, I interact very little, if at all, really not at all, on social media. But I do, I still have a Twitter account, right? For varying things. I mean, sometimes I get messaged on there or whatever. And there's certain people I like to keep an eye on. Jeff Bezos is one of those people because I've talked about for years the Amazon World Domination Tour. And I have been calling Bezos' shots for just as many years. And I get, whenever Jeff Bezos tweets, and he hasn't had a Twitter account for long, but, and he rarely tweets, but when he does, I like to know what's going on. And when he tweets, I get a notification. And Wednesday, I saw the tweet where him and Mackenzie put out, kind of a joint message on Twitter, which is how the world found out. Unbelievable that kind of thing happens on Twitter. But I guess then we have an asshat in Washington, D.C. who makes foreign policy on Twitter. And I guess nobody has a problem with that. So whatever. Twitter is where you can say these kinds of things. But it sounds like between him and Mackenzie, it's a very amicable thing. They're talking about how they're still going to be partners. They're still friends. Sounds very much like when The Rock got divorced a few years ago from Danny there. And hell, she's still his manager, right? I mean, they're divorced. He didn't get married again, but he's with the daughter of the drummer from Boston, I think, the band Boston. And they're still totally friends and they're still doing business and whatever, having a great time. I mean, it's incredible. Now, to some degree, it doesn't appear to be proven yet 100% that Bezos is actually with Lauren Sanchez, that they've been dating or doing whatever. There's pictures of them together, but, it's not 100% confirmed. Okay. So we should be sensitive to that. But then at the same time, there's been plenty of days where, honestly, if it wasn't true, Bezos could have come out and said something. The reason I want to talk about this is that I think sometimes we look at these people who appear to be on top of the world. You could even be the richest man alive, which Jeff Bezos, depending upon the day, is. Or perhaps more accurately now, was. You could have everything. You could be on top. You could be, you're the shining example of Western civilization. Jeff Bezos, you are proof. Man, in America, anybody can make it. You can do it all. What a great guy. Let me shake your hand, pal. Woo. You can have it all. You could be in a relationship. You're seen as a power couple, which I think Jeff Bezos and Mackenzie certainly were, just like, Melinda and Bill Gates certainly are seen as that and so on. Not that they're divorced. But you could be in the position where you could coast the rest of your life. You have done it. You have climbed to the top of the mountain. But then someone comes in your life and shows you perhaps what you've been missing the whole time. Perhaps, I'm not knocking, I'm not knocking Mackenzie at all. I don't know a whole ton about her. I feel like I already know way more about Lauren Sanchez than I do about Mackenzie Bezos. But Jeff Bezos, obviously, was missing something in his life. And it didn't matter if he signed a contract with, someone who he loved at the time. And, if he broke that contract, that he would lose half of everything he ever made. And now with Amazon, that's substantial. But if, again, you could say, well, yeah, people get divorced all the time. People separate all the time. People do this and that all the time. This kind of relationship, happens all the time. Divorce is not uncommon, right? Hell, I've been divorced. Okay. I've been divorced for over 7 years now. But, you get a lot of commentators, a lot of psychologists and relationship specialists that would say, all the fights and all that stuff, it's always about money, and the divorce is always about money, blah, blah, blah. With Jeff Bezos, I don't think that had anything to do with money. They had to do with, in my opinion, depending if everything's true, that the man found someone who he loved more. He found someone that met more of his needs. He found someone that, you never want to use the term complete, like, you complete me or some kind of bullshit like that. And that is just bullshit. But he found someone that perhaps was more in line with the adventure of life that he was upon. And again, if this has been going on for months, if Lauren Sanchez was still married, they weren't separate, her and her husband weren't separated yet. And obviously Bezos is just now filing for divorce. Lauren and Jeff Bezos chose love. The rules be damned. The money be damned. I mean, granted, if you're only going to lose half and you have 144 billion or something, that's not that big of a worry, right? It's not that big of a deal. But no matter what was going on for them, they chose each other and they chose love. And not only that, if the dick pics are true, first off, I mean, hey, Bezos, if you got it, you got it. Bravo. But if you're sending dick pics, look, we're all freaks. Even the richest man in the world is a freak. Okay? This is kind of what I started off with. I think so many people think that some of these other people, Larry Page, or go down the fucking list of them, somehow they're better. Oh yeah, their level of success is, equates perhaps their morality. No. There's no morality here. Contract broken. Oh my God, he broke a contract. Contract broken. Dick pics sent. Sext messages getting freaky saying, I don't want to be gentle with you in the morning, baby. Woo! Folks, if the CEO of Amazon is a freak, you can be a freak. If the CEO of Amazon doesn't give a shit about the money and is more interested in love, you can give up everything for love. Do you understand? And you didn't need Jeff Bezos' permission to do this sort of thing. But I think it shines a very, very big yellow and black Amazon symboled light that love is the most important thing in the universe, not all the money in the world, and that you can get a little freaky about it. Hell, you can get a lot freaky about it, and I suggest you do. And it's amazing to me that there really hasn't been any kind of crazy dips in Amazon stock. There has been, it feels like there's been practically no backlash. I think most people just want to see Bezos' dick, which I can't grasp that, but maybe this could become a major product line. If Amazon's the everything store, let's get a plaster caster on that baby. And, you too can feel like Lauren Sanchez, right? But Amazon goes on. I don't think anybody stopped and said, gee, I'm going to cancel my Prime membership because of this. I don't think anybody said, I was going to order some of those ropes and some of those fishnet stockings on Amazon today. But because Bezos is a goddamn freak, I'm not going to do it. Nobody's doing that. Let's get over it. Let's just accept the fact that, that it's okay to be a freak. And that, a guy who is, in my opinion, almost literally taking over the world through commerce by becoming both a monopoly and a monopsony can be brought to his knees by love, by a woman. Phenomenal. I think it's a great thing. I'm not a big fan of Jeff Bezos. That's not going to shock anybody. I've talked about him for far too long. Okay, I have maybe the respect I have for him is similar to Kirk's respect for Khan. But I can appreciate when a man puts it all on the line for love, and when he sends maybe a couple dick pics. I'm sure they were warranted. I imagine he did not just send them out of nowhere. In fact, apparently, like I said, some claims are is that Lauren Sanchez was just so damn proud of that dick pic, she's the one that leaked it. She's proud of her man's business. However you want to take that. And right on. I love it. I love it because fuck, especially with Silicon Valley, because so many people in Silicon Valley try to have there's this bro culture aspect, or when it comes to, the tech giants, they think they just have this squeaky clean image, oh yeah, we are perfect. We are here for you, and we're good for your family and all this shit. And no, Again, I'm not knocking Bezos for doing it. I applaud him. I applaud you, sir, for, doing what makes you happy, because that's the purpose of life, is to do what makes you happy and to be with people that make you happy. Whoever that happens to be and whatever that costs, you do it. Good on you, Jeff Bezos. Now, just quick, I do want to say, I mean, it is kind of funny that out of nowhere, okay, and I put links in the show notes for this if you want to find out more. I mean, not the biggest of deals, but like within a day of that happening, there's the announcement of by 2020, Amazon's going to have their own game streaming service, obviously to compete with Google and others. And then they were talking about, was it IMDb Free Dive, which is an ad-supported television network, which apparently has Quantum Leap on it. So, hey, you know, if it's free and you want to watch Quantum Leap for free, fuck, I couldn't think of a better thing to do for a night. I mean that. I mean, you know, for them to like come out with these major announcements and everything, I mean, certainly that was to try and soften the blow of what's going on with Bezos. But I mean, you know, that's just classic marketing tactics, right? But I mean, and I'm also, you know, I'm kind of impressed that his competition isn't like going after him. Like I figure, you know, Walmart. Well, okay. I mean, to be fair, things can get freaky at Walmart too, right? I mean, and you know, really freaky. Okay. Woo. But I'm just saying that, like, you know, Walmart didn't go after him. I mean, nobody's like attacking this guy. They're just letting it ride. And yeah, the tabloid press and some of the tech press is, you know, getting into it. And of course, I'm talking about it, but I think I'm talking about it in a congratulatory sense, not in the sense of, oh, shocking, you know, even though then I don't really think people are that shocked. And maybe this is finally society realizing, you know what? The way that we've been like setting up our relationships and the expectations on people and the societal pressures on people is just getting a little fucking ridiculous. And good on the richest man in the world for, you know, again, putting it all on the line. So, yeah, I mean, we could find out that the whole Lauren Sanchez thing is BS. I don't think that's going to happen, but we could find that out. But whatever, man. You know, Bezos, for the first time in a long time, my hat is tipped off to you, sir. We'll be right back. Sorry, I said tip and anyway, I'll be right back with some more sovereign tech. And, well, just as I'm congratulating Bezos, we're going to start ripping now. I'll be right back with more. You know, a show where you could call in and like talk about all this about Jeff Bezos and everything and his divorce? Free Talk Live. Woo. Free Talk Live, Sovereign Tech sponsor. Look, this is the number 27 talk show in the country, in the United States. Number 27. That's huge when you think about all the talk shows that are out there. And it's the only libertarian talk show. You want to talk about personal freedom, baby? This is your show. And they always have really great topics that they're discussing, but you can call in and talk about whatever you want to, but you got to go, believe me, you got to listen to this show. Man, if you knew how long I'd been listening to Free Talk Live. In fact, I used to be a co-host. It's such an honor, but it's an honor to have them as a sponsor. freetalklive.com. That's the website you want to go to. If you've never heard it, believe me, you've never heard anything like it. Okay? I mean, I totally got my start on Free Talk Live. There'd be no Sovereign Tech without Free Talk Live. I think that's a fact. So go to freetalklive.com, and I thank them for sponsoring Sovereign Tech. Woo! Let's get back to the show.
HackSec.
It is time for HackSec, where we talk issues of hacking and security. And I mean, look, folks, some relationships end. No matter how great you think everything's going, blah, blah, blah. You know, I mean, sometimes, you know, in relationships, there's this concept of the game changer, where a person comes in that you could have never imagined existed. And yet they come into your life and you just go, holy shit, look what I've been missing and look what I could have. All right. And maybe that happened for Bezos. And if it did, hey, you know, people being happier, dynamite. Great. But this isn't so great from Amazon. Let's talk about it. Of course, a couple years ago, for our first story, I'm actually going to give, this is a twofer. I'm going to give you two stories because I think they're so important to discuss. I want to get into both of them. Amazon bought Ring, the Ring video doorbell. You've probably heard, in fact, if you listen to another podcast series I'm rather fond of, that being Twit, or the entire Twit channel. I really should do a channel. The Twit channel, they bought Ring back in 2017, and you probably heard the ads for them on there. I even tried to get them as a sponsor on Sovryn Tech at one point, but this was some time ago when perhaps I wasn't so interested in making you privacy minded. But now I'm kind of glad that I never had them as a sponsor, because apparently they have. Well, here we go. Actually, here's a story from Android Police. Amazon's Ring reportedly gave unrestricted camera access to employees. Here we go. I love this first line from Android Police. Very, Android Police is not, look, I mean, it's not a bunch of anarchists or anything over there. All right. These are your run-of-the-mill, tech junkies. And for them to say this, I think that's a statement. Here's the first line. It might be time to throw your Ring cameras in the garbage. Woo! Yes! Absolutely. I will support that statement all the way. Anyway, Amazon purchased Ring in 2017, and the company's smart home security cameras and locks have continued to be incredibly popular. In fact, the Ring Doorbell 2 was one of the best-selling smart home devices on Amazon during the 2018 holiday season. However, reports from The Information and The Intercept claim that Ring gave unfiltered access to all customer video footage to its R&D facility and some employees. A source told The Intercept that in 2016, Ring provided its research and development team in Ukraine with a folder containing every video recorded by every Ring device worldwide. No filters were reportedly in place and no encryption. Oh. I mean, granted, this is before Amazon owned them, or at least this was in play, but we'll keep going. The source said the company's leadership believed that, quote, encryption would make the company less valuable, end quote. Each video file was linked to the device's owner, and according to The Information, the employees regularly watched customer recordings to help train Ring's object detection AI. Around the same time, executives and engineers in the U.S. were reportedly given access to Ring's technical support video portal, which included live video feeds from some cameras. Again, there were no filters or restrictions on what could be accessed. Reportedly, only a customer's email address was required to watch cameras from that person's home. The Intercept source said, quote, if someone knew a reporter or competitor's email address, they could view all of their cameras, end quote. Low-level employees allegedly still had access to user information and videos as early as October 2018. So it's well after Amazon bought the company that potentially this was still in place. Now, Ring did respond. In fact, specifically, they say Ring reached out to Android Police specifically and stated the company currently does not provide employees with access to live camera feeds, only videos that are publicly shared to the Ring Neighbors app. Okay. But let's talk about this. All right. I don't care what Ring says that they've only allowed for. The bottom line is that at some point, the evidence is very damning that people, that employees with Ring could absolutely look at any video feed at any time and check out those videos for whatever. Doesn't matter what app or specific server, perhaps, that was getting stored to in reference to the Ring Neighbors app, which is kind of like a neighborhood watch kind of thing. So, of course, that would make sense why there would be public videos. But it's pretty clear that, oh, no. And I mean, there's screenshots and everything of the video showing where, okay, I mean, maybe could it be as benign as training AI? But then consider that a lot of this data collection is all about improving various AI, and the purpose of that AI, well, who watches The Watchmen with that? And to continue to train this AI, I mean, that video has to be stored and available. I mean, and apparently it wasn't encrypted at all times. So that video, it's just a matter of time when it's going to leak, and potentially it already did. I mean, honestly, I don't mean to insult anybody at Ring. But let's it would be fun to go to the Ring office, and I just want people to kind of superficially look around and see and say, hey, would you trust that person with with looking at your front yard, or with looking around at your video feeds and whatever that entails with Ring, to say nothing of the interconnectedness now with Amazon's own interior video camera security system that's there. I mean, if they didn't have the policy set up with Ring, a wildly popular product, how great of a policy does Amazon really have with their own? I mean, they're both Amazons now, but you get my point. And really, like, I don't mean to insult anyone at any tech company, but look, I've worked at tech companies, and I know how seriously I take privacy. I know how seriously I take security and so on. But then I also know that I'm a rare bird, even at these tech companies, as far as people that really give a shit about this sort of thing. And, you know, if you want to say that people care about surveillance, I mean, how many of these people have Instagram accounts? How many of these people have whatever social media account where they're just schlepping out their life willy-nilly? Why would they care about yours? Because their job's on the line? The fuck it is. They're just going to say, oh yeah, well, we're just feeding it to the AI. I mean, Uber was doing the same thing. I just want you to walk away from this story considering one thing. And that is whatever data you send to another company, tech giant, whatever, someone else is going to look at it. And you have no idea who the hell that is. You have no idea, you know, who's going to jerk off to it, who's going to do what. I don't know. I mean, and you could say, well, what's a Ring video doorbell going to say? Well, I hate to go there, but it might spy on, it might, you know, be your kids playing in the front yard. We don't think enough about who is looking at our data, what is happening with that data. We just think it works like magic and, oh, it's in the app and it comes down and, whoo, everything's hunky-dory and it's okay because whatever, I got from A to B thanks to handing over that data. You have no one stops to think about the broader implications of this. And I feel like I keep hearing more and more stories where people just are giving up on privacy, and what a shame. So maybe that's why nobody cares and everybody's still buying Ring video doorbells. I don't know. But another one that you might want to care about, this is the second story that I wanted to get into. In fact, here it is from Android Police again. U.S. carriers under fire for continuing to sell phone location data to third parties. Now, it's not enough that you're probably buying your phone off of these companies. It's not enough that you're already paying, you know, whatever for your cell phone service, whatever premium that happens to be. But this isn't even new. I mean, this was getting reported on that they were doing this last year. And if you remember, John Laguerre comes out, you know, for the head of T-Mobile, CEO of T-Mobile, that wacko. Okay, he comes out and he says, oh yeah, we've stopped that. It's not happening anymore. Then Motherboard does some research and finds out, holy shit, oh no, they're all still doing it. They're all, it's like they're not even caring. And now, you know, after this report comes out now, okay, just in the past week, now Verizon, Sprint, AT&T's not doing anything because, of course, AT&T doesn't care because they're a government organization anyway. But, you know, T-Mobile, John Laguerre's reaching out to, like, the reporter from Motherboard saying, oh, no, we've stopped it this time. Oh, yeah, you can believe us now. We're not doing this. But, like, how much what more do they need? You know, I mean, these companies are doing fucking hand over fist over data. I mean, what? Are you going to tell me that, especially like with Verizon, right? How the hell much do people pay for Verizon still these days? Back when they were selling this stuff off and they had been doing it for years previous, okay? Well, I mean, I remember when Verizon was charging $130, you know, whatever, a month for cell phone service. I mean, crazy amounts of, okay, it's not really that expensive. It's not $1 million, but I mean, you know, in comparison, crazy amounts of money, okay? I mean, they just don't care. They just don't care about you. I mean, they're just there grabbing. And they have, you know, I just got done saying how people don't care enough about their privacy. These companies sure as fuck don't. They'll do anything for a goddamn buck. I've said it before and I'll say it again. That smartphone, all it is a block of sensors sitting in your pocket, okay, that is sending off who knows what data, okay, until somebody does some actual investigative journalism. And don't pay any attention to even what the CEOs of these companies say. I mean, John Laguerre, like, talk about pie in one's face. I mean, holy shit. Like, he got caught so red-handed here. Okay. I mean, total double-speak contradiction, the whole thing. But Brian, I need the location data. I need my Google Maps, you know, I got to get around and all that. Buy a separate GPS. Is Garmin going to sell off your data? Probably, but fuck, at least that's only one sensor compared to 30 sitting in that smartphone of yours. For fuck's sake, we're human beings. We're not just data points, and we're not just somebody to get advertisements and ads schlepped off to us. We're not just consumption machines. And no, we're not. We are so much more. And we're just handing all this shit over. I mean, it'd be one thing if maybe you could cut the deal with Securus or whatever is the name of one of the companies I think that they were selling off location data to. You know, sign the deal with them and say, yeah, okay, I'll give you my location data, but you give me $50, whatever, $50 a month or something like that. It'd be one thing if you could even do that deal. At least then you'd have some say in the matter and you'd get a genuine reward. But no, you're paying for the privilege of being tracked and sold off. Ridiculous. Reconsider your relationship with your technology and consider who is looking at everything that you're doing. Think about it. Okay, if you worked at a tech company, I want you to think about the worst person you can remember there. Guess what? That person probably has access to data points on millions of people and might even have video feeds of millions of people. Consider that. I'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. Woo! Hey, baby, I know. You are tired of Gmail. You have had enough. Well, I have a solution for you. What I want you to do is you go to Fastmail, okay? It's fastmail.zog.ninja. That's the URL you can use. You're going to get a discount with that. You are going to love this. This is email for email's sake. This company does nothing more. Just email, and they do it right. All the latest security technologies. You want to log into your account with your YubiKey? You can do that. Fastmail has your hookup. Very inexpensive plans. I want you to check it out. You go to fastmail.sovryn.com. That'll get you the hookup, and it's an honor to have them as a part of Sovryn Tech. Woo! Let's get back to the show.
This week in blockchain.
Woo, all right. I'd like to say we could just calm down, but not really. We have some very interesting news. Not a surprise, but vindication really for Sovryn Tech. Years ago, we're talking maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I had done some little investigative journalism of my own from afar and found out that what was really kind of a newer blockchain company at the time, at first they were trying to take on Coinbase, then they became whatever the fuck they became. But the company Circle, they had gone to, or more or less had an invitation to go to Facebook's offices, and they were chatting it up with Facebook. And at the time I said, just give it time. Facebook is looking to get into cryptocurrency very seriously. And now again, understand that was 5 years ago. Now back in May, and this was kind of quiet, back in May of last year, 2018, kind of weird that we have to say that, but this isn't the first episode of 2019, is it? No. Anyway, but back in May of 2018, Facebook more or less announced that they started a blockchain division. Okay. And this is one where they were a little more public about it, which I think there's something interesting within that, because Facebook has, and this is where I've also done other investigative journalism, Facebook has created other divisions, but really the only way we ever find out about it, and I'm usually the guy that's looking these things up, is by looking at their job hirings. At what kind of jobs are they looking for? And you find out that they're working on brain-computer interfaces, like literally where you're jacking your brain into the computer, hit me, right? A little Keanu Reeves, Johnny Mnemonic. But I found out about that myself as well. And then, others had reported on it. But they had this one they were public about, that they were starting a blockchain company or a blockchain division. And now it appears it's quite confirmed that they are looking into developing a cryptocurrency for specifically WhatsApp, which makes sense. In fact, one of the head guys, well, I can read a bit of the story here, but basically one of the head guys at Facebook Messenger, went off to head this cryptocurrency initiative into WhatsApp. Now, that shouldn't surprise anybody. And why? Why aren't they putting this into Messenger? That's because around the world, where cryptocurrencies, one could argue more so, I think in America, cryptocurrencies are needed too, but certainly in other parts of the world, cryptocurrencies are far more needed. What's the most popular app out there? Well, it's WhatsApp. So, for the areas that would leap onto, out of necessity, that would leap onto a cryptocurrency and really latch onto a cryptocurrency, WhatsApp is definitely the platform to go with. Anyway, I want to read here. The story I have is from Gizmodo, but Bloomberg was the original ones that reported on it. Citing sources familiar with the matter, Bloomberg reported Thursday that Facebook's long-rumored cryptocurrency is in development and will allow users to exchange currency through its encrypted chat service, WhatsApp. But don't expect it super soon. Here's a quote. Quote, "The company is developing a stablecoin, a type of digital currency pegged to the US dollar. To minimize volatility," said the people who asked not to be identified, discussing internal plans. Facebook is far from releasing the coin because it's still working on the strategy, including a plan for custody assets or regular currencies that would be held to protect the value of the stablecoin, the people said, end quote. The company is currently eyeing the remittance market in India, which, again, that speaks to the point that I just made, that, of course, they're going to put it into WhatsApp, because in the areas where they're trying to get some kind of market growth, or user growth, say maybe China, which isn't going to happen there, but, India and others, yeah, WhatsApp is huge. Of course, in China, it's WeChat, right? WeChat is the internet in China, pretty much. Anyway, a spokesperson for Facebook told Bloomberg the company is, quote, is exploring the ways to leverage the power of blockchain technology, end quote, and that its new crypto outfit headed by PayPal's former president David Marcus is, quote, exploring many different applications, end quote. Marcus announced in May on where else, Facebook, that he would be leaving the company's messenger team to join its blockchain division. So that's the guy I was actually talking about. So he was within working for Messenger after he got, more or less poached from PayPal, and then here he is. And anyway, he says, after this is the quote from Marcus, quote, "After nearly 4 unbelievably rewarding years leading Messenger," yeah, I bet those were rewarding, "I have decided it was time for me to take on a new challenge. I'm setting up a small group to explore how to best leverage blockchain across Facebook, starting from scratch." So anyway, despite the year of hell that Facebook has really been having, they are not backing down on their cryptocurrency ambitions. That's for sure. Again, for Sovereign Tech listeners, this should surprise no one. Because we called this years and years ago, long before any other, tech news organization was even thinking about it. In fact, back then, they were still making fun of blockchain. Now they don't do that anymore. But I do think that this actually plays nicely into a conversation we had, a show-long conversation that we had a few episodes ago, where Douglas Rushkoff was talking about tech investors and tech execs that he was talking to and how they were planning on making sure they could get the fuck out of the U.S. and that they would have a currency or that they would have some kind of security and that they would be able to store their wealth and survive a upcoming economic collapse, apparently in America. And they were talking about either going to New Zealand or Alaska. I think that this could even play into that, where, again, WhatsApp is probably the most used messenger app in the world. It just is. I don't trust it. I think its implementation of the Signal protocol is flawed. There has been evidence to prove that. We talked about that years ago when they initially baked in the Signal protocol into WhatsApp, that it was flawed. But yeah, if there is this worldwide platform outside of America that so many people are using and it has a stable cryptocurrency, in fact, they're saying, it's going to be pegged to the US dollar, but then they go on to say, well, like when Marcus is talking, they're talking about, well, we got to find out which currency it's actually going to be attached to. So there's no guarantee that it's going to be attached to the US dollar. And if it's not attached to the US dollar, I think that's even stronger evidence that this is a play to create a platform where, the nouveau riche or the tech giants or whatever fucking term you want to come, the tech execs and the investors and VCs and everybody, they have a place to store their money that is readily usable around the world in various markets. And certainly WhatsApp would be a major, major player in that. Is this going to... This announcement, in fact, when this announcement dropped, this was a few days ago, I half wonder if this is what kind of helped push other cryptocurrencies up a little bit, because regardless of what Facebook's going through, a lot of people still think that WhatsApp is this great thing. I don't think you should think that, especially since one of the co-founders of WhatsApp left Facebook over and ended up going to and funding Signal, right? That should be pretty damning about it. Okay, but I do wonder if that happened. When it releases, is this going to be good for the broader blockchain evaluation, of various cryptocurrencies, altcoins, Bitcoin, all that? Yeah, probably. It would probably help those out. But I do think it's getting developed for, well, it's Facebook. So it's inherently, in my opinion, nefarious. So watch out for this. And, well, hopefully, I mean, I guess the one good thing is there won't be an ICO. Whew, I'll be back with more. Hey, I know what you're thinking. Wow, this is a great fucking show. And you know what? I agree with you. And I'm not just saying it because I'm the host. Woo, but I am the podcast champion, baby. And let me tell you, if you want to help out the podcast champion, you want to help out the Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, and you want to make Sovryn Tech an even bigger show, here's how you do it. And don't worry, it's not for free, and you get something out of it. You go to Patreon. You go to patreon.com/SovrynTech, SOVRYN Tech. Patreon.com/SovrynTech. Become a Sovryn Tech patron, and you will get access to literally thousands of hours of bonus content. There's new content every week. You get to be in the live Q&A hangouts that we do every month. You get to access to the Wednesday Q&A. We do one every single week, and it goes a good hour strong, if not longer if needed, depending on how many questions there are. That's only for patrons, and all you got to do is at least $1 a month. Some do significantly more, and I'm honored by that. But become a patron, support the show, help it grow. Patreon.com/SovrynTech. And I thank you to all the patrons already out there and all of the ones to come. Patreon.com/SovrynTech. Woo! Let's get back to the show.
The Climax.
It is time for the Climax, baby, where I can talk about whatever the hell I want to talk about. Sometimes it's a topic, sometimes it's a comic book, sometimes it's a movie, sometimes it's a TV show, even though, you know, the best television show in recent years has finally come to an end. Of course, I did a full review of it on Patreon. That being Voltron Legendary Defender. Very sad, 8 seasons, and she's done. Well, at least we have Castlevania, right? But yeah, you won't hear me review too many TV shows these days. Of course, having done this show for 7 years now, I mean, a lot of my favorites and ones that I recommend people watch, I've kind of already reviewed. But maybe it'd be fun to revisit those sometimes. But speaking of revisiting, what I actually want to talk about is a movie, and in fact, a classic, or what I consider a classic, and dare I say a forgotten classic. Because I think it came at a time, it got released at a bad time and kept it from becoming as big a movie as really I think it should have been. Now, speaking of Patreon, there was a re-release of the soundtrack for this movie, which was done by John Williams. And this movie's from 1979. John Williams was at the top of his game. I mean, all the way. Jaws, just got done with Star Wars, was probably scoring The Empire Strikes Back. In fact, the soundtrack for this, there's cues in it. Sound very much like Empire Strikes Back, but a deluxe edition of that soundtrack got released like back in October of 2018, and it was actually my album of the week on Sovryn Tech, or on the Wednesday Patreon Q&A, but that's only for patrons, so you got to become a patron if you want to become a part of that, or if you want to hear that and get access to that. But regardless, I do want to talk about the movie itself here, because I revisited it recently and watched it again on Blu-ray, a beautiful transfer, slightly longer cut of it. But really, no matter how you see this, I think this movie is just absolutely brilliant. And again, it's just one of those movies that I think fell through the cracks for no good reason. There's reasons why, but that doesn't mean that they're good ones. Anyway, the movie is Dracula from 1979. Now, most people, when they think Dracula, generally they'll think, of course, the classic Bela Lugosi, or they will think maybe, was that Gary Oldman? Whatever, with Keanu Reeves, the one that came out in the 90s. A lot of people, technically called Bram Stoker's Dracula, people will think of that. Maybe if you're really saucy, you'll think about Dracula 2000. I enjoyed that movie. Jerry Ryan, which they made like a whole trilogy out of those. Most people don't think of, Dracula Untold or something like that, that recent one that had Luke, the guy that played Professor Marston there. Anyway, regardless, okay, and he played Owen Shaw, right? Owen? Yeah, not Deckard, but Owen Shaw in Fast and Furious. Anyway, most people think of those films. I've almost never heard somebody, like if I ask somebody, they say they're into vampires, and I ask them, what's your favorite Dracula film? Because Dracula is actually the most used character, I think, in fiction in general, but certainly in movies. There's over 100 Dracula movies around the world. Like one single character, I think Dracula still holds the record. And so granted, there's a lot to choose from there, and I can really respect if somebody said, one of the Christopher Lee films or, one of the Hammer films or something like that. I'm a big fan of particularly Dracula, but also of vampire movies and vampire media in general. I always think it's very sexy, but yeah, I almost never hear, in fact, no, I've never heard someone say, oh yeah, my favorite Dracula movie or my favorite vampire movie is the 1979 Dracula film, directed by John Badham. And what a shame, because this is easily my favorite. I mean, easily. Of course, Dracula in this is played by a very young Frank Langella, a lot of people may know him. Well, if you saw him, you know exactly who he is. He plays a villain in a million things, especially as he got older. He also played in a movie we recently reviewed during the Climax on a Sovereign Tech Prime episode, that being Masters of the Universe, He-Man. He played Skeletor, and he did a hell of a job in that. I mean, just phenomenal. Some of his speeches were just some of the best, but then I'm one of those weirdos that listens to Skeletor speeches very often, be it Frank Langella or otherwise. But Laurence Olivier was in it too, playing Van Helsing. Which was, Laurence Olivier. I mean, he is who he is, right? And they had Donald Pleasance, of course, playing the father to Lucy. And Lucy herself, of course, the love interest of Dracula in most renditions of the story, is being played by Kate Nelligan. And Kate Nelligan, I mean, just stunning. Really, really sultry. Maybe, if I was just going to talk, go on the sexy scale, maybe the sexiest Lucy in history, just about. Next to, I don't know, I'm trying to think who played her in Dracula Dead and Loving It, the Mel Brooks one, because I love that line where it's like, Lucy, I'm British and so are these. And she just opens up her shirt. There's her tits. Anyway, Kate Nelligan's great in this. But really, Frank Langella steals the show. And I just have to say, as someone who's been a fan of Frank Langella for a long time, because I like my villains more than I like my heroes. I mean, and I've seen him in a million things. When he was young, sweet fuck was he hot. He was hot. Like, holy shit. I was watching this again, and I mean, I haven't watched it in a few years. I remember watching it as a teenager. I got to see a really rare cut of it at a convention back then. And certainly, maybe later that night I got to reenact the part of Dracula with the person I was with, but we're not going to talk about that right now. But I'll tell you, I don't remember then thinking now when I watched it now, and hell, maybe it's just the 1080p Blu-ray, I don't know, but fuck, Frank Langella was sexy as hell. Man, what I'd give to look like that. I mean, I get told I'm the sexiest man alive, but Frank Langella, goddamn. Anyway, so Frank Langella actually, at the time, he was on Broadway doing the play version, the Broadway version of this. And the Broadway version was doing so well, and there have been so many different, I love actually the most recent Broadway production of Dracula where Frank Wildhorn's actually did the music for it, and it's just fucking amazing. I mean, granted, hey, nothing would take it away from John Williams' score in this movie, but Frank Wildhorn's just great. Anyway, so at the time, I mean, it was really, really, I mean, that was a big deal. And so they're like, let's put this in theaters. And that's pretty much what they did. And they kept Frank Langella right through. They brought in a bunch of other people, but they kept him. And I can totally see why, because he's absolutely magnetic. And he almost becomes more of a tragic character, than he does actually villainous. And there's something enjoyable in that. But the movie does something different than I think the Broadway play at the time did. As far as I know, this was not a part of the Broadway show back in 78. And let's be clear here. Frank Langella was Dracula for like a good couple of years. I mean, he was doing that. And actually, ever since, he's done everything he could to kind of detach himself from that character. He's never played it up again, never made a joke about it, never, anything like that, which is a bit of a shame because I think he's probably, Lugosi's great. But I think Frank Langella is the greatest Dracula of all time, just hands down. He takes them all on. Anyway, I'm going to give you a big spoiler here, but it's not exactly a spoiler because it's open to interpretation. The beautiful thing in this movie, this is probably the only Dracula story that I can think of all Dracula stories, whether they're based off of the Bram Stoker's novel or Stoker's novel or not. Okay, and even though they kind of sexied it up from what Bram Stoker originally wrote, which, of course, if you know the history behind the Dracula novel that Bram Stoker originally wrote, there's actually another version of it called Power of Darkness that was very different and was kind of sexied up. So it's not crazy that that would be a thing. Anyway, at the end of this, it appears that Dracula might have gotten away because you sort of, he gets put up on, like, effectively on the mast of the ship, more or less, and it looks like he gets burned up in the sun. But at the end, you see his cape flying away. Now, there's the potential that his cape, or what looks like his cape flying away, it might even be a bat. And of course, in this movie, Dracula is one of the things he can do, which he's known for, is, transforming into a bat. The cape flying away could either be the wind carrying it away, and the director, John Badham and the writers, they agreed they wanted it to be ambiguous, so it's whatever you wanted it to be. Me personally, I want it to be that Dracula got away, and that he will survive, and that in fact, it cuts to, Kate Nelligan as Lucy. It cuts to her, and she sees the cape kind of flying off, and she just has this amazing smile, just like sexy, satisfied smile. And if you want, you can email me and let me know how many times I said sexy in this episode. But anyway, I know I say it a lot, but it's what I think about. But Kate, anyway, she just gives the smile. And I always felt like that smile was really her knowing, because she did have some contact with Dracula. She'd been, bitten by him and agreed to become his bride, and they were going to create a new race and everything. All very hot, in my opinion. Like, I think that's so romantic. It's so hot. That she would know that he survived. And I think she did. And in my headcanon, you can say, even though Frank Langella never picked up the character again, they never did a sequel, and the movie kind of tanked in the box office. Unfortunately, because there was other Dracula media that came out at the same time that was comedic. And so I think a lot of people didn't know what to make of this movie. And so they thought that maybe this was comedy or something like that, when no, it's just dead sexy. But, if there were a sequel, yeah, Dracula survived, Lucy and him maybe ended up in the New World or something, and they start breeding an entire race of vampires. That was another cool thing in this movie, too, is that there's a lot of conversation, because you don't get this a lot in other Dracula films all the time, but there was a lot of conversation by Frank Langella, a lot of hints at, like, this tremendous history that that Dracula has gone through, and like that he's like, oh, I've taken on all these other guys, I'm the last of my kind, talking about like that there's so much more to I mean, it was almost like you could imagine like a movie series I love, Underworld, with Kate Beckinsale, of course. You can imagine like him hinting at a lot of history, like Rise of the Lycans and stuff like that, from Underworld. And so there's just so much going on and so much hinted at in this movie that if you're a creative person, or if you're somebody who's still in touch with your imagination, you can fill in a lot of the gaps, and it just becomes a very epic film. In fact, another part that I think is, some people think it's ridiculous, other people think it's epic. The moment when effectively Dracula and Lucy stoop is a scene that some people might find kind of familiar, but it's known as the wedding scene. Now, it's not like they walk down an aisle and are getting married. What actually happens is that it's this really wild sequence. And it looks like something out of James Bond. There's like this really weird red laser effect, and Frank Langella apparently doesn't like it. He thinks it takes away from the tone of the film. I can understand what he's saying, but I just think it's so cheesy and precious what you get. Like the music, John Williams' music gets wild in it, and you definitely get the hint that they're having sex. Now, the funny thing is it looks like something out of a James Bond opening, right? With, the dancing girls and, and the lasers going on in the background and everything. And guess what? That's because it was directed by the guy, like John Badham said, told the guy, I forget not John Mills, the guy who actually made most of the opening sequences to James Bond films. He called him up and said, hey, bring your lasers, and if you got some free time, I'd love for you to do this. And he actually directed that part of the movie. So, you have a James Bond sequence in the middle of a Dracula film directed by the guy who actually directed all the intros for James Bond. I mean, and then, put in that John Williams score that just makes you swoon. I mean, what more could you ask for? This is such a hot and sexy film. Again, too few people, they don't remember it. So if this can entice you to go check out this movie and watch it and give it a chance, oh, I hope it does. It is, everybody's at the top of their game. And I mean, and you know, the funny thing too, like, I don't know if I said this earlier, but the effects in it, you know, it's mainly a very character-driven film. So there's not a whole lot of effects. Like, maybe there's points where Dracula is like climbing up a wall or down a wall, and that looks kind of, you know, that might look kind of odd, but that only happens like maybe a couple times. There's not a whole ton of effects in it. The only effects that are there are very practical effects, which probably allowed the actors to do very well, you know, playing off of each other and everything. I mean, and that's, oh man, that's a thing too. I don't know what it is. There's such a wonderful sexual tension, it seems, literally, genuinely, between the actors. And that just shows up on the screen, much like you'd get in a lot of, I mean, look, old movies, you know, movies back, you know, kind of pre-Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park, I think, is really the cutoff point between modern cinema and you know, I guess you could call it now classic cinema. Yeah, movies pre-Jurassic Park are just by their very nature are just better. You know, even though my favorite movie of all time is Gladiator, older films are just better. It's just a fact of life, you know. And yeah, this really puts it on. You know, because I mean, and there's no other Dracula film, even though it's based off of Bram Stoker's novel very much. There's still just nothing else quite like it, and it is a snapshot of time. And again, you know, for Frank Langella alone, you got to watch this. So do check it out. Anyway, you want to hear more content like this, or you want to just get more of me? Woo! You need to become a patron. Just go to sovryntech.com, get your hookup, thousands of hours of content to get access to. Maybe I got some other plans in the future, even outside of Patreon, but we'll talk about that more soon. Woo. I will see all of you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is Copy Heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.